like to welcome Todd on the Zoom, and the rest of the board members and our audience. First item is roll call.
Terry Bisbee.
Here.
Rod Calhoun.
Here.
Marla Erickson. Here. David Marshall.
Here.
Todd Miller.
Here.
Bo Penny.
Here.
Bob Snyder.
Here. Okay, second item is the approval of the agenda. I would accept a motion for the approval of the agenda. You have a copy of it. Any questions before then? Why?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Okay, we need to have a motion to go into recess for the student dining project.
I move that the board recess to tour the student dining facility project in the Parkland Student Union.
Have a second.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded that we go into recess for the tour. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are in recess.
John, Todd, you guys are
Yes,
welcome.
Carter.
It'll probably be at least 20 minutes to half an hour before we get back. So if you
Okay.
get back in when you see that we're back in session, that you're welcome to do that.
Okay, I'll get the steaks off the grill.
Julie will take us for a walk.
All right.
Lost my razor. You should be with mine.
Thanks for coming.
What did you say, Carol? Okay. I need help finding the recipe. What food? No, but I can eat my meal.
Well, they're touring the dining facility.
Girls are laying there with their wings off. Going to my TV here, and then we have that heat lamp that's still on them. I turned the space heater off. Haven't moved that heat lamp yet. It's supposed to be warm now, it's gonna be cold again. So it'll get down to the 60s tonight.
Oh, and on Vinny's, I finished all of my graphic design.
Oh, yeah?
Good, so no more F in graphic design. Good.
Do you really not have an F?
Well, she had to do it
Did you send her a message? Huh?
Okay.
Okay.
Right, he's gonna ask some questions because she did her finger with your side.
Almost as something a little more vulgar, but he's on that call, so.
Yeah.
Todd's still awake.
I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Next item is the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Accept the motion.
We need to move to reconvene.
What?
You need a motion to reconvene.
Okay, you told me that. Did
Yeah, we put it on here, so. To be safe, let's go ahead and do it.
I move to reconvene the meeting.
have a second?
I second.
Been moved and seconded to reconvene the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No? Motion carried. Okay. Can I carry on?
Carry on, boss.
Number 3, approval of the board minutes from the last meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes from the April 9th, 2020 regular meeting and the May 6th, 2020 special meeting as presented.
Have a second.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried unanimously. Number 4, financial reports, approval of the college bills.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the warrant and invoice lists for college bills in the amount of $3,764,440.24 as presented.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on any of those bills? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Okay, the consent agenda. We can take A, B, and C, personnel, bids, and surplus, or does anybody want to single out any item in those?
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to just make a statement about the resignation of the cheer coach, Kayla. I hate to see her go. I think she did a great job over the last 2 years. It was obvious, and we heard a lot of comments about the hard work and the level of performance that those kids provided for the fans this year. And I just would like it to go on the record that we really appreciate the job that she did here.
Thank you, Terry. I hope we can replace her with somebody good. Any other comments? If not, I'll accept the motion for A, B, and C, consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda with late additions, A, personnel, B, bids, and C, surplus as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Next, we have reports and recognition, strategic planning. Tricia?
Good evening, everyone. Just a quick update. We have 3 active strategic planning projects in completion tracking, the high school portal development, and strategic enrollment management. And all 3 of those are winding down. We have pretty much institutionalized all of these projects and all of their components. And now we're ready to retire them, so to speak. And so that'll be happening this summer when we write our kind of end of project write-up. And then we're at the current time, we're reviewing new proposals for new strategic planning projects. And so our April meeting was spent doing just that, reviewing a variety of projects that were presented as proposals. And each of our members, after we discussed each and kind of debriefed on each one of them, we each ranked those projects individually. And then Robin was gracious enough to kind of compile all of that information for us. And at our May 20th meeting, we will be reviewing those final ratings on the proposals, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be deciding on our final project selections. Of course, a lot of it's going to be dependent upon resources and time availability, that kind of thing. But those are the factors that are kind of weighed into that process of selection. So hopefully when I'm back next time, I'll be able to tell you about new proposals that we've developed and adopted for to begin in the fall of 2020. So, any questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have a Radio Kansas update. Ken?
The one on the stand is what he needs to use.
Oh.
All right, fair enough.
Oh. there you
Radio
go.
guy,
That's what
you
he-
can take that.
I think
So-
you were fine.
That's pretty scary to be that broad. Radio Kansas update. There is a lot going on. We could be here a long time. So I boiled it down just a little bit here. First of all, I want to congratulate everybody in the room on commencement. Radio Kansas was a small part of that. We're always proud to be. But congratulations to everybody who made that happen. Particularly thank you so much to David Plantle, who, because all of our production took place within the window of our fundraiser, we weren't able to do everything we would have. Well, actually, we were prepared to do everything we would have normally. But then when it turned out there were 3 times as many names to read, because everybody gets read, whether you decide to show up or not, well, that became quite a project. And David was our partner in taking on some of that extra effort. And I really want to make sure, tell him how much we very much appreciated that. Lots of partners in lots of things. Now, when you're reading names, I don't know how many of those you heard, but we did what we could. But I'm glad that one of Lauren's employees, Ulysses Silvestre Alanith, I'm not sure how that goes. Is that okay? Well, he helped us a great deal in our fundraiser. We thankfully, I had taken, like I'm sure we all did in college, a fundraising 201, which is fundraising in a global pandemic. You probably remember the textbook. So everything, we were entirely prepared to do everything we just did. It was just pretty much opening the book, right? But Ulysses was able to make it so we could actually obey the letter of the governor's COVID protocols and still have a fundraiser, because our phones were actually routed through an app. I guess my phone's up there, but you've all seen apps, and there's one that makes it so phones can be routed to individuals' homes. And sure enough, we had our staff all working from home over the 19 hours a day that we're fundraising. We trim that as the days go by. But anyway, thanks again to more of Lauren's staff for helping us out. As I said, fundraiser was conducted legally on the up and up. I was in a studio. I never touched anything but that studio. Someone followed me, but we had 2 rooms separated by glass, 2 parallel groups of people, and that was it. No more than 2 people at a time. And despite that fact, we had pretty darn good results. Now, public radio right now, I think you can guess, is serving America like never before. The information that's available to us that's critical, as critical as it always is to have local information. Information, the expertise that's coming to us about this pandemic and how we should respond to as individuals is national level expertise. And NPR is there every day with 6 hours, rolled over many, many times. But I mean, it has been, I think, a service like it's never been before. It's hard to come by actual ratings for something like public radio because we're not here for ratings, but we think we're serving more Americans at any given moment than we've ever had a chance to before. And that almost exactly offset our fundraising potential that I think you can all agree, by the time America started getting locked down, a lot of people were uncertain about their own financial futures. And we think probably the over 20% of potential loss that other nonprofits are reporting, that was, again, essentially offset. So how did we do? Well, over the course of a year, we have about 224,000 people who are ongoing supporters. And so we kind of budget half of them to the fall. And our target, our budgetary target is $330,000. And by the time all was said and done with our on-air drive, we only were short $16,000 on that minimal target. that $16,000 is really just about twice what we would have left on the table for strategic reasons. When we close our on-air drive, we want there to be a balance so we can go back to other people and say, well, you know, drive's over now, we missed you, and there is still need. So that was actually pretty good. But again, it's offset by the fact that we're serving more Americans better than ever before, and they know it. And it's just, it's a humbling thing to be a part of. We were, as was fine arts, a part of the CARES Act federally. $75 million, which sounds like a lot, was made available to public broadcasting. That's like 3.5 thousandths of 1% of the $2.2 trillion package. It's a very much appreciated $75 million, but in the big picture of what's going on, it's not like we are literally taxing the American economy to make this happen. But for a station like Radio Kansas, this money was, the spirit of the availability of the money was to assist rural stations specifically. We have about half of the population density that we would need to be considered an urban station. And so we qualify for special funding occasionally and did here, and that's $111,000 in a grant. And there's an outstanding request with the federal government for what would, in a linear way, would amount to another $200,000 if it became available. But I'm not going to tell anybody that there's more money coming from anywhere. But it has been just a heck of a ride. I'll just tell you again, other fundraisers are worried. You know me, I'm a gloomy Gus. I can find a gray cloud in the sky at a great distance, but we really think that America is going to get its legs under us, and we're going to be moving forward, and things are going to feel normal enough soon enough. Not soon enough for a lot of our taste, but just we don't have any long-term plans for long-term adjustment. We think our business model is fabulous. As always, our staff thanks you for being so supportive, allowing us to serve the community really kind of on the community's terms. Coming to them twice a year, asking them which services have earned their support this time, and take that information and do even better for them in the coming year. So with that, thanks. And of course, I'm available for any questions.
I have one, Ken. I don't think you addressed this. The $75 million, was that earmarked in any way for certain things?
It was for public broadcasting. The spirit of the request was for it to be for rural stations who are particularly having a problem. So no, not a specific earmark beyond that. It was, I tell my friends who have a certain take on fiscal responsibility that this is money that was set aside, and it was either coming to Kansas or was going to Walla Walla, Washington, or Ohio, or someplace else. And so we're thrilled to have been able to participate for you.
Thank you.
That was a great recap, and it's nice to hear some kind of positive news.
Well, and unfortunately, again, the positive news is because we're so important right now. We're living something literally extraordinary, and it's humbling to be a part of it, but it's also gratifying to be recognized.
Thank you, Ken.
We're going. I'm going to take a second to take an executive privilege here if I can. I don't know if I told you all at the time it happened, but we have a new doctor in the house, Dr. Ryan Gill. Ryan graduated from the University of Nebraska. Congratulate him and welcome him to the club. Congratulations, Ryan.
And speaking of Ryan, curriculum summary for April. I suppose you're going to expect a raise now, huh?
Nope.
I am good with just right. I would like to also say that the HutchCC graduation was much better than the UNL graduation. That was virtual, so, yes. But going to the April 2020 curriculum report, Department 1 had one course modification, PN 106, KSBN, Nursing Care of Adults 1. And this was a Kansas State Board of Nursing requested competencies being added to the aligned course. Department 2 had 5 course modifications, 20 new courses, and 4 program modifications. The majority of these were from the cosmetology program, which includes both the modified and new courses. And what it was taking the previous curriculum with the core outcome, with the outcomes and competencies, and dividing them into smaller credit hours to help accommodate for a future part-time program, as well as align with the barbering program courses. There's also a new course in Department 2 with IS 160 Cloud Computing, which will be utilizing Amazon Web Services, Educate, and other content to prepare students and an industry to move towards cloud services. Department 3 had 5 course modifications. All of these modifications are related to the Kansas Board of Regents Fall 2019 Kansas Core Outcomes with those meetings, and that way they're aligned across the state. Department 4, 1 course modification with MA 105 Intermediate Algebra. The majority of the changes included removing the overlapping course content that was being taught in either basic algebra or college algebra. This class falls right between those to avoid any redundancy. And then Department 5 is with 1 new course and 2 program modifications. The new course, Fire Instructor 1. This course is needed for students to be able to take the International Fire Service Accreditation Congress certification after completing Fire Science Officer 1 course. The program modifications include this new course and also some changes that were created to allow for more flexibility for the students. That would be the April 2020 curriculum summary. Any questions?
Any questions, Ryan?
Where would I find pandemic fundraising 201?
We can easily look into that and then look for, do an assessment about the needs.
Still in
It's all
development.
about transferability.
It is. And whether or not general education, transferability. Yep.
Any other questions? Ryan, you stay put for the next one, but need a motion to approve the curriculum summary.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the April curriculum summary as presented.
Second,
I'll second it.
been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Course fees revision, April 2020. Ryan?
Along with the curriculum changes that occurred, then of course we have the course fees that go along with this to be approved, because this would be after when all the course fees. So each of these are related to the different curriculum items between this meeting and also April.
Questions? I'll accept the motion to approve the revisions.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the updates to the course fees as presented.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion before we vote? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
Thank you,
Ryan.
Thank you, Dr. Deal.
Consideration of non-renewal of personnel. First, we'll take this in 2 motions. First motion is 2020-0514. I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve resolution number 2020-0514, expressing the board's intent not to renew the employment of Jacob Gooden and authorizing written notice of such intent to be given to Jacob Gooden not to renew his employment for the 2020-2021 school year.
A second.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Okay, the next item is 2020-0514-1. I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve resolution 2020-0514-1, expressing the board's intent not to renew the employment of Rich House NLM, and authorizing written notice of such intent be given to Ridge House NLM, not to renew his employment for the 2020 through 2021 school year.
I'll second it.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Next item is executive session. First is negotiations.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board recess for a closed executive session in STC room 205 pursuant to the exception provided by the Kansas Open Meetings Act to discuss employer-employee negotiations, and that President File and Vice President Julie Blanton be included in the executive session to advise the board. The open meeting of the board will resume in the Justice Theater of the Shears Technology Center at 8:05 p.m. and no binding action shall be taken by the board during such executive session.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are in executive session, and Todd will see you in the other room. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Also, I would entertain a motion for non-elected personnel to go in executive session for.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board recess for a closed executive session in STC room 205 to discuss confidential employee information pursuant to the exception provided by the Kansas Open Meetings Act for discussion of personnel matters of non-elected personnel, and that President File and Vice President Julie Blanton be included in the executive session to advise the board. The open meeting of the board will resume in the Justice Theater at the Shears Technology Center at 8:40. And no binding action shall be taken by the board during such executive session.
We have a second.
Mr. Chairman, I second.
Then moved and seconded, we go in executive session to discuss non-elected personnel. No decisions will be made following reconvening the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. We are now back in executive session.
Hey, John. Hey, John.
Yes,
I don't think we're gonna need you.
okay.
If we do, we'll get in contact with you, okay?
Okay, yeah, if you need anything, just give me a call.
All right, thank you, John.
Okay. Good night.
Good night. All
Is she hyper?
But I think probably that sign is what's being shown right now on YouTube.
Robin, were you needing something?
What?
Did you need something?
No, I was just wondering what was the shot of YouTube when the meeting was in session.
It's the graphic that's up.
Right, but when they're back in session, it'll just be that top picture.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Absolutely. Rod, don't sit down.
Don't sit down, you won't be here that long.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's not a good thing to hear when you go into your boss's office.
No, you're right.
Don't sit down.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting back to order and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
I'll second.
And moves a second that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Bye.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, my God.
That going into your boss's office, not sitting down reminds me